cool. And then you read about them, they're a maintenance nightmare, you know. But it didn't matter. It was really, they're cool. And they're beautiful. So it's a little bit of my background. So we bought, when I took over the company in 2015, 16, we moved out of our old location and bought a space, and it was built in 1915, and it's heavy timber. So it's 110 years old, 110 years old this year. So when a client asked me to do a 100-year building out of mass timber, I said, yeah, it works, it's fine, right? So, and this is not mass timber, this is the heavy timber in the definitions. And I'm so glad Laura and Seth are here, because if the questions get really complicated, those two know more about my building than I do. I could skip this, you had a great lecture by Woodworks, and Woodworks was a huge partner in the building I'm gonna show you. And we heard this from, but I have a little different way of explaining this. And so the numbers, these are all 10-year-old slides. So I've been talking about this for a while, and then eventually it's going to get to the project we're doing shortly. But we have roughly 23 million square feet, 23 million acres of timber in Georgia. And it takes about 23 years till you can start to harvest it. So that means we can harvest 1 million acres a year and never lose an inch of forest. I mean, and whenever I told the real forestry people that, it's actually bigger than that. It's growing at the same time. So we have just a lot of potential in Georgia to be, a major leader in this space. And the other thing I like to tell people about timber from a structural standpoint, as an architect, we're super green firm. Sustainability is all we're about. Healthy buildings is all we're about. Healthy placemaking. And where can you take, what if I told you, forget about timber for a minute. I said, there's this product out there. It could fit into the palm of your hand. You put it in the ground. You let God water it. And, 23, and the whole time for 23 years, it takes pollution and turns it into oxygen. And then you harvest it, and it could hold up a building for 100 years. I mean, that's just an amazing product. No other product, you can't tell that story with concrete or steel or anything else. And you just think about all the mining for concrete and for all the different products. It's very, very sustainable product. So the project was named the People's House for Brookhaven. And one of the things we've been fortunate, we do a lot of town center work, and so we end up doing the heart of communities. And that's always about really understanding the population we're serving and the people and the site and the program. And this had, and Brookhaven is the place where it's at, amazing group of people in Brookhaven. And the site was perfect for sustainability, challenges out, a lot of challenges when it comes to acoustics. We are literally 15 feet from a MARTA track, an elevated MARTA track, but we're also at a MARTA station. So in terms of transit accessibility, it's a great site. In terms of healthy living, it's a great site. And the program, we had a client that really wanted a building that celebrated living in Brookhaven and actually celebrated a regional level. So the programming for the building is actually minimal government offices, about 2/3 of it, I'll take you through the floors, is open to the public for renting, for celebrations, for weddings, or movie night out of the I'll show you the chamber, but it can be used for movie night. So this is really the people's house. They literally meant that. And it's a very tight site, so most city halls you like to see on a town green. That'll probably happen on the 11 acres on the backside. This is like a vertical town green. So when you see it, there's a green roof on it. So this is the building. It sits on Peachtree at North Druid Hills, so it's got a lot of exposure, as it was going under construction. The first floor, all the yellow is public space in the first floor. There's parking underneath. And the round area, which eventually becomes a dome, but it's also the council chamber up above, is a big meeting room for about 200-300 people. And that can open up to the whole lobby area, which was interesting. When I first started working with the Forestry Association, they actually wanted to do a museum in downtown Atlanta. Remember that? And they wanted to do a mass timber building on a mass timber park deck. They didn't own the land, but they just thought that was important to begin to communicate it. And so we got hired and did some programming and planning for it. And it would have been an expensive endeavor, so it was hard to raise the capital for it. Well, we've kind of done that here without you having to raise the capital, because it's open to the public, it's mass timber, anybody can hop on MARTA anywhere in the region and come out and see this. And they can have events here. I mean, we ought to have an event like this. And the second floor is where more of the administrative offices are. There's an atrium in the middle, and there is a boardroom that was done big enough for nonprofits. So they want to open the doors to everybody in the region that needs, has a monthly meeting. A lot of us are involved in nonprofits. I'm going to move my nonprofit here that I work with, the Land Economic Society I run. This is the chamber level on the third floor. And the top floor, as an architect, I'm kind of a nut about the history of architecture. I've been to a lot of domes around the world, and you can climb up the dome in this little spiral, but you never really can do anything. So this is a dome where you can have a party, you can get married. It's just a covered trellis on top of the building. This is the building under construction, and I wanted to talk about challenges because it's not a cakewalk to do mass timber. I want to talk about the challenges and opportunities. I see every challenge as an opportunity. Some were pretty big, and some are still challenges. So the structural sizes are we said the part we didn't tell you about mass timber. It's lighter and stronger than steel and concrete. It's bigger. The footprint's bigger. So we have a 3-story, very tall atrium. The first floor is because we have assembly space, so the first floor is 24 feet high. The chamber's 18 feet high. So it's almost like a 5-story space. And I wanted to have these wood vertical, columns going up, and just the footprint of them were just huge. And so I'm not a purist about getting something done. So I said, well, that may be a place where steel makes sense. And so in other words, if you take on a mass timber building and you start looking at long span stuff, really think through the size of those members, and don't be afraid to mix it with other material, which is a lot of your examples showed that. The lateral bracing, I've been to the mass timber building in Portland where you could do the lateral bracing out of timber. I just felt as a 100-year building, concrete cores were the best way to go. And just solid, no question about it. If you're trying to push the limits of mass timber and educate everybody, I might have done a mass timber one, but there was actually members of the client side of the council was like, is this really going to work? They were challenging us because it hadn't been done. So I felt good about the concrete solution. Plus, a lot of them have to handle it on the outside, and I wanted a lot of glass and daylight in this building. The cost control, I think the only way to deliver one of these is CM at risk. And it was constant value engineering. I mean, constant. The contractor didn't like at one point in the presentation, I told him we value engineer out $28 million, and it still keeps going up in cost. So we were at a time when the people in the construction industry know the costs were going through the roof. But we constantly value engineered. And the client had huge aspirations. He was a term limit mayor with a real interest in architecture and doing a legacy project. He got the idea of mass timber right away and thought it was good for the state, saw the economic value in it. But he wanted to take the whole council to Barcelona and look at the Sagrada Familia. Anybody familiar with that project? That architect is one of my favorite. He designed it for 43 years. And he'd been building it for 200. It's like I don't have that much time. But he had all the same ideas, and I had to kind of flush through all this value engineering. It was fun. But having your contractor and then having a really good team, good structural engineer, and we're working with Laura constantly. I mean, I feel like part of our office wanted to move in with her afterwards. The other thing about mass timber I kind of like, as you see in our office, the column spacing is less. I mean, as soon as you got the steel and concrete, you could do 30-foot spans, but our buildings got uglier because they lost their human proportion. I mean, and I see so many buildings now that are just they're just bad buildings. They lost their rhythm, they lost the vertical proportions of a good building. And a lot of our classical, even stone architecture, was based on wood spacing. You know, if you look at the wood detailing of the Greek temples, that all could be done out of wood. You know, so I don't mind the fact that we have a 15-foot spacing on the facade, and then you can go deep this way, so there's a pretty clear span inside the space. But that's something you need to be aware of. And one architect said, yeah, but I've never seen anybody hug a concrete or a steel beam like they'll hug a wood column. You know, so if you got to have an extra one, like they were fighting, I want one of those in my office. This is the vertical. You can see those white are the steel. We actually do have wood behind it, but they only have to span from floor to floor. And then we really wanted to do a wood dome. It ended up being open air. And part of the value engineer we kept dealing with, the metaphor of the tree was part of this building. You'll see it when it's finally detailed out more. But every time we curved, and I know timber can curve, it got value engineered out. I mean, every time. And then some of it was supply chain issues. And there's a great timber company in Alabama that does all this curved stuff for churches. And it just never made it through. So being practical, it's a steel dome. And you saw this before, but it's pretty amazing the carbon sequester ability. And a lot of things when I think about what will really take mass timber to the next level in this state. It is actually the financial. I mean, basically, it's the economic engine. If you can make money, something will explode, right? I mean, it's just common sense. And I had a good friend that was in the solar energy business early on, Inman Solar. And he worked in all the states around Georgia because they were doing credits, for solar. And then finally, Georgia got their act together and started doing credits for it. And he just boomed. His business boomed, and it was all over Georgia, because the performer worked. And mass timber, still as people are getting educated, is a premium up from a concrete or steel building. I think you get it to scale, that'll change, but there has to be something done. So this first step of calculating the environmental impact of using timber is important. But there are places that actually give, that you can sell that financial gains. Right now, it's not trading very high. But the more we can look for financial incentives, just like we wanted to clean our air, so we paid you to drive Priuses, right? But I remember when it was polluted. I went to India recently and wish they had electric cars. We could laugh about electric cars, but it cleaned our air. And this has that kind of impact.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Question right here.
Yeah. Oh, interrupt me anytime. I'm pretty cool with that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just recently moved from New England a few months ago, and I've done a lot of work on historic sites and historic districts. Do you ever run into trouble trying to maybe transition 100-year-old buildings to mass timber, whether interior, exterior, or is there a lengthy process that you have to go through to get approval to do that? In many cases.
On my office building you're talking about?
Yeah, or just you've done work in historic districts where you're changing a facade and you wanted to do heavy timber, but you run into restrictions.
Well, I mean, I could tell you my own experience. I have a historic facade, and I tried to change it, and I couldn't. Yeah. So it's not. And we wanted to do. I have a planning team, an interior team. The planning team wanted to put murals on it. You could. It's a historic easement. It's a tax credit that somebody else got years ago. So you do have to work with the regulations. The biggest hurdles for us in the building were not so much historic where this one is, but I do deal with that where I am right now in my own office. It was the fire marshal. It's an education process, and I learned that from previously looking at this. And but what's cool is once you educate a district or a fire marshal, you don't have to do it again. Once they've done one, they're super nervous to begin with. It's a lot of education. But once you've gone through that, the next one's a lot easier, and the next one. So I think the more jurisdictions. In Atlanta, was even the T3 was going to be built in Chicago. And Chicago's regulatory environment wasn't catching on as quick as Atlanta, so that was a good sign so Heinz did the T3 in Atlanta because the regulatory environment was better for it. So we are stuck with the regulations. I spent a whole career though, it seems like my whole life I find something that's really good to do, and then I find out it's illegal to do it. So then you have to work on you have to become an advocate. I mean, one of them, I wanted to create walkable environments. I saw Seaside when I was in grad school. I said, this is how we should be doing everything. And then you look at the codes, it's like it's illegal to do this. And so, I spent 10 years working on rewriting zoning ordinances so you could build walkable places. Well, timber's on the same path. We got to make it easier to do the right thing. And it's funny, you go in depth in it, that these laws that were passed, this is kind of make me jaded about politics, but the steel industry spent $50 million trying not to get that law passed. So it's a battle. So this is one of our this is a video of it. Let's see if I can.
I can do it for you.
Somebody over? Can you?
I have you here.
Yeah,
Just let me
go
know
ahead.
when you're
Go
ready.
ahead. There's two videos, one of the design and one of it under construction. This is not that old. This is probably 3 or 4 weeks old, where it's at right now. See how close Marta is. I think it's flipping now. Have you seen this part?
So it's still under construction.
We could stop it now. There's another one we did when it was under construction. Or under
Question,
design.
is it still under?
Is it still under construction?
Yeah, August. It'll be done in August. And there'll be a lot of, some people, the AIA, I think, is after us doing a tour in May. And there's going to be an event in July. But I think it's going to be a building that they're going to want to invite people to tour. So I'd be happy to, anybody, I've got cards with me, and Laura will be, and Seth will all be part of that. They're making actually a Lego. They're making a Lego that you can actually build the city hall right now. This was during the design process, something our team put together. You can go full screen on it by going down to the. So this is more like the final product, although we have a little more color in the facade now. But you can see the tree metaphor in the entrance, and then the railings, and there's actually a tree in it. The current mayor, all he wanted was a tree, so we put a tree in the middle of the atrium. But even the railing patterns are punch steel tree leaves patterns. I thought this music was really perfect in how they timed it, and then when I was in Barcelona on a leadership, there was this innovative town center that they were showing us, or innovation district. Same exact tune. I guess it's just an option. That chamber space is a lot of glass and looks down Peachtree Street towards Buckhead. And Peachtree Street bends in a corner, so as you get stuck in traffic, you're kind of looking right at the curved portion of the project. There are trees on the roof in a couple places. And that's the council deserves a lot of credit for taking the risk. And here's our complete team. And I'm glad Seth is there. Laura might as well have been a part of the team. So y'all have any questions, anything you saw you're wondering about? Yes?
Since you've done, you said you do a lot of like master planning too and like campus planning, have you ever done like anything with mass timber with like pavilions or anything like that?
Yes, actually, we do a lot of churches too, and we've been working with mass timber as a glue lamb, right? We've been working with that for a long time in our church work, and I've done some mass timber pavilions in the church work. We did a mass timber library, just the glue lamb portion, and it was T&G. I did a library before I joined the firm for Marist, and then Mike did one for downtown Smyrna. That's mass timber. Yes.
So, I've always really liked the old-fashioned timber frame style that some, like, really old houses were built in.
Yeah.
So, can mass timber be used for residential, for residential construction? Like, is that legal? Because you're talking about all the fun stuff.
Yeah, it's almost a down. You have to. It's overkill, but you can definitely do it. And there's a Harvard professor I met who actually, I think she taught at Tech for a while, and she's done one in the Old Fourth Ward. It's really cool, and it's all mass timber and the sheathing and everything. But actually, I'm working with, because this is rather expensive end of mass timber. I'm working with a developer friend, and we're going to do modular homes. The thing about timber, mass timber, that works in the current kind of housing crisis is how fast you can put it together. I didn't talk a lot about that because Lauren covered that pretty good. But if you can make a little module that's an affordable house, but there's also a lot of dignity if you're living in an affordable house with this wood ceiling in it, I think there's a big opportunity in using mass timber for that. Stick frame is still, I mean, when you look at, construction costs, how I got into this, I was trying to do affordable housing tower on the Beltline, and I knew stick was what made affordable housing work for the financial markets. And so I just thought, well, we just have to do concrete slab every 5 floors and we could build 18 stories. And so I came up with something like that. And and actually Howard saw that model and he said, there's a whole world out there that's looking at doing this. And I learned how you would actually do that, which with a lot of the stuff that you saw earlier. But it could definitely be used in residential, yeah. Especially some of the modern homes you see coming out, it would fit right in. I'll tell you the economic side. There's innovations on many levels with this project. This is actually not costing the residential taxpayers a penny, this whole project. The mayor, pretty innovative, and he looked at the special service district that you used to build the battery, used to accelerate the Beltline, and he took the commercial property in the city of Brookhaven and made it a special service district. And all you had to do is get council to vote on it. They had one commercial property owner that thought it might not help him, but he was trying to sell his property at the time, and they did something to solve him. But it really wasn't a big hit to the commercial property owners, and it generated, usually about $200 million in bond. That's not going to this project. They're doing a lot of other stuff. Less than half that goes to this project. But it's a way that the taxpayers were saying, why are you spending all your money on this city hall? Well, they're not paying for it. They thought their taxes were going to go up, and their taxes didn't go up at all.
So how are they paying for it?
It's a special service district with that you leverage the 30-year bond, and their taxes are still cheaper than DeKalb County. So there's a city within DeKalb County was able to raise their taxes just on the commercial property and not on the resident and apartments. CIDs do this as well, but CIDs don't have the power of a city, and CIDs can't include the apartments. So you can include anything you want. You just draw a map and do the calculations. And so it was a pretty innovative funding tool. Now Marta's hired him to see how he can do that for TODs around the region. It's a really good tool. We're helping some other clients with it where they were stuck, getting their projects off the ground.
Cool, thank you.
One more question.
One more question.
Sorry, did you also have to go through the program of the building and it being like a government building? Did you have to go through like a public approval process, like sending it out to the neighborhood and like allowing time for feedback or any type of process like that?
Yeah, we did a lot of public feedback. We programmed the building with the department heads and this city council. I'll talk, the community's the other side, but we also we did end up going to Chicago, not Spain, and we looked at, they wanted a significant civic building, so we looked at some of the significant buildings in Chicago and some of the strategies, and that was really helpful. But then we really wanted, this is the people's house, so we did several public meetings and several outreach and asked them what they wanted. And some of the artwork that's coming was what came out of that, some of the way the bottom space opens up, the way they can have movies. We also looked at 2 or 3 with the city council, recent city halls in the Atlanta region and learned from each one of them. Alpharetta had some good lessons that we picked up on. I think they used theirs for a movie night as well.
Bill, how easy is this building to cool for air conditioning this summer?
How easy it?
Efficient.
You know, the thermal, all right, I didn't go into, I'm glad you asked that question. The thermal qualities of it is just like any building, we have to use insulation and double glazing or triple glazing. The thing that I've learned at this project and a project I did right down near the airport, it's the noise. So I didn't tell you this, but this building's seeking LEED Gold and WELL Gold. And WELL Gold is it a healthy building, not just an energy efficient building, but is it healthy to be there? And a lot of that is acoustics. And the wood conversation we had about acoustics, it's a challenge. But a lot of times the same thing you do to make, and we have a train track, which is almost as loud as the planes, the projects I did in College Park. And, but the same things you do to make it, to shut out that noise from the planes also increase the thermal performance of the building. And it doesn't necessarily have I look at mass timber and the timber structure as kind of like the bones. And you got skin and you got a lot of stuff over it, right? And so it's not that are performing different functions. And so it's skin function. I don't like putting wood on the outside, it warps and all kinds of stuff. So when I work with timber, I try to make sure it's all on the inside of the building. And I think about it, you wouldn't want to expose the bones of your body, right? But it's it's how you wrap it that makes it acoustic. The other thing we had to do, and we know it from our office, that the sound transmission, there's residents above our office, and the guy if he had a chihuahua, we'd hear him walking across. I mean, it is that transmission. So I knew that was going to be a challenge, and you usually put like an inch of gyp creek on it, or an inch and a half to get that. But we also did baffles because we have a lot of we have a lot of meeting rooms. So we do these acoustical baffles, and then they make light fixtures now that are a baffle themselves. The whole light fixture is a baffle. So acoustics are a challenge, and it's something you got to really pay attention, because part of it is because you want to expose it, right? You can solve acoustics by just putting a seating like this in there, right? But if you do a wood building, you want to expose it, and so then you got to deal with the acoustical qualities of what you expose. The other thing we did, we talked to every architect and structural engineer, mechanical, about a mass timber building. They always want to tell you how they dealt with the ductwork, because you don't see any of the ductwork here, right? But you're going to see it in the mass timber building. And all those questions about the electrical. Well, early on, we went with a raised floor throughout the whole thing. So we have an 18-inch raised floor throughout the whole building. All the ductwork's under the floor, all the wiring's under the floor. So when you look at our ceiling, it's pretty much exposed except for the sprinkler system. So, that was a big move, but it was, I think, a smart, another alternative to that process. There was a question.
Bill, what are some of your favorites as far as a planning system for the exterior of mass timber?
That was a whole exercise, and I know now through several value engineering, the city liked the fact that they had Oglethorpe University down the street, and so they wanted this whole thing to be granite, and they even have a deal with a quarry in DeKalb County. So that was locally harvested, And so we tried to do granite all the way up. And one of the rounds of value engineering, and it frustrated me, it's like we were over designing the building, is you had the wood frame, and then you had a steel column outside the wood frame, all the way around the building. It's like we were doing, and it was like this, I felt like I wasn't being a good architect. And so the final value engineering, like towards the end, was let's use metal panel above. I said, most people don't look at buildings over 25 feet. The first floor is all granite and cast stone. And then from there, it's all metal panel. And we found some really cool metal panel. And then when you hang it on the wood, you don't have to do that. You don't have to, we got rid of that whole steel cage, value engineered all that out. And so I would, if I was to do it again, I like the timber and masonry look like a lot of the warehouses, and if you're stick to a certain number of floors, that'll work. This one was a little too tall. Metal panels is it obviously a solution. Another one is curtain wall, because I like to expose it. Either you do it, like an old warehouse, and you can see the wood on the inside, or you do a curtain wall system and you can see this beautiful structure. And that's a self-supporting system too, so that hangs itself. It's expensive though. The curtain wall option was expensive.
Essentially, you're creating an envelope much like any other type of framing system, right? Or mainstream.
Pardon?
Essentially, you're creating
Yeah.
an envelope like
Yeah.
any other project
Yeah.
or a rain screen.
Yeah.
And it's going to keep your thermal barrier out,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, the difference is, if it were concrete or steel, we could just put a shelf angle and hold the masonry up each floor, But the wood, movement in the wood, that wasn't advisable. So we had this whole extra steel frame and grid on the outside that went all the way down to the foundation. And that just seemed, you could actually see it in some of the photos. It goes up a floor and a half and then stops.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bill.
I'm sure they'll keep you informed. I'd love to give anybody a tour. Take a good seat.
Did you drive that?